Here we are. I am live with good old Poppy Libs, Andrew from Popular Liberty. He is the host of the Popular Liberty podcast on YouTube and all the podcatchers. He is also the founder of the GOP Mises Caucus, and he is here to talk a little strategy. Andrew, are you ready to roar? All right, Andrew. So, for a while now, it's been quite a while, I guess, since that first post-libertarian podcast came out, and let's just start there. You don't like the term post-libertarian. I don't think anybody really does necessarily, the people that are called it, the people that use it, but you really focus on the term Praxian. So let's just start with that. Why do you prefer the term Praxian to describe, I guess, where you are strategically or where you are philosophically with the liberty?
Post-libertarian is more, it's a moment, not a movement, because, this is a term that I think was originally used by Curtis Yarvin to just describe people who have gone through libertarianism, comprehended it, and then moved on. And, and they can move on to just regular conservatism, or they can move on to, maybe more like a Tom Woods style conservatism than than a boomercon. But they could also be moving on to the alt-right, or they could be moving on to neo-reactionary stuff, or, a whole bunch of different right-wing places. They never go left, they never leave libertarianism to go to the left. That just doesn't happen. And the whereas Praxian, I would say, is this is actually where you go. Post-libertarian is just a moment, that you realize that that libertarianism, as it's constructed as a thin ethical framework, does not work. It actually needs quite a lot more with it. And usually people will comprehend this as, oh well, you need some culture stuff too. It's no, actually it's quite a lot more than that. And this thing by itself does not work, and could not possibly work. And in order to get to the civilization that we want to go to, Antiattacks or something like that, you're going to need quite a lot more. And so you could even say that there are a lot of libertarians who kind of accept the post-libertarian premise that that this thing by itself doesn't work, and we need to kind of figure out why. And and there are a lot of different explanations that they come up with. Praxian is my version of it, where I'm saying, hey, I think your view of economics is incomplete. Not wrong, just incomplete. And because of that, you're getting wrong answers. And this is what we talked about last time with archotropism.
You could even argue in a sense that, even if you might not agree with the way they're doing it, or you might not think it's the most effective, even people in the Libertarian Party or the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus are, in a sense, post-libertarian in the sense that they're not just they're not just understanding the philosophy and stuck there. They're understanding the philosophy and trying to do something with it. Now, you would probably argue that that's not the smart thing to do, but that still is taking it beyond just the philosophy in a sense.
Yeah, and the whereas with the LP Mises Caucus, they've accepted, particularly in the, we've gotten a lot more, I would say, Praxians since 2020, whereas LP Mises Caucus has been around since 2016 or 17, something like that. And, this was when people realized that you can't just say non-aggression principle. You can't you actually have to go get some power in order to apply it, and stuff like that. And the idea that, hey, we actually need power in order to enforce our beliefs has been like kind of the major sticking point of people who don't like post-libertarians, because, or Praxians, as I should say, is that we're saying, hey, we need power, and there's no other option. We are not going to be able to just have a popular democratic movement that wins hearts and minds. And because let's face it, the state does not care about hearts and minds. They do not. And they were happy to just lock us all in our homes. And a lot of people, they kind of took one look at this and they said, more, please.
Yeah.
And so it's like, this basic premise that people have that, oh, everyone's kind of just a libertarian. We're all living in like they're all living effectively libertarian lifestyles. This is just not true. What they're actually doing is outsourcing their predation to professionals. Like, this is specialization and division of labor. This is not people living peacefully. And and when we saw this in 2020, that was when like kind of the dam broke for post-libertarianism, for the post-libertarian moment, and you had a lot of people come in and say, yeah, okay, if liberty is ever going to happen, the irony of it is probably going to have to be enforced because people don't want it. They don't want it. They want the predation, and they are paying for a service for someone else to go out and predate against you on their behalf. And this is like basically incontrovertible in light of 2020. Like, if you had said this in 2019, I could understand how I would get pushback for it. Post 2020, I'm like, you're just not living in reality if you don't accept that at least a solid 40% of the population are like real predators. 40% easily, and it's probably higher. And because let's face it, it's like about 40% were just hardcore lockdowners, and then there were a whole bunch more like more moderate lockdowners and stuff like that. And like where was the right on I understand. Hey, where was the right? Where was the Republican? Well, okay, maybe not the right, but like the Republican Party, because there were a lot of right wingers who were like, no, we don't want any of the statism or anything like that. There were a lot of good ones out there, a lot of them, but there were others who were like, hey, do we want the bailout to be $600 or $1,200 in paychecks? It's like that was the scope.
If you're conservative, you'll only argue for $600 a person.
Yeah, and so and those were more like your moderates or whatever, and so. But they weren't like the hardcore lockdown where, oh, you maybe should have like a partial lockdown or something like that, or maybe just some restrictions, or maybe some masks or something like that. And there were more moderate positions, but let's face it, those moderate positions are still like serious impositions on our liberty. And we have to contend with this fact that not only are we badly outnumbered by people who really do not want liberty, like we are outnumbered by people who are really actively opposed to it. And
that is a difference. That is indeed a difference.
Yeah. So if we're going anywhere, like, and by the way, they're in the wrong. We're not. They're in the wrong. So this is an aggression. So we're not even talking about like aggressing against people now. We're talking about playing defense and saying that, hey, we're going to need to use power against these guys, and the only way to legitimately use power in our system is using the state. And that doesn't make it right, but it does make it real. So. Where I come from is that libertarians need to seize power, and that starts with like at the local level and seizing that kind of power and building your way up to the state level. And the federal government's kind of lost cause. I don't think there's any point in trying to go to Washington.
Well, that speaks to, I think, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on to talk more about your specific strategy. I mean, there are. I think the criticisms come in broad brushes. Like it's the same criticisms are directed at you, at Tho, at Pete, as if you're even the same persons with the same ideas in the first place, which you're not. You all have slightly different ideas about things and slightly different strategies that you're pushing forward. But they all seem to share one thing in common, is that they're not addressing your actual strategies and your actual criticisms. Because what I hear, the most common thing I hear is like, oh, you're going to go take over the GOP now? Oh, did you see? And they'll even mention things like you did. Like, the GOP didn't save us from the lockdowns, the GOP this, the GOP that. So that's why I want
to save us from the lockdowns. My argument is I'm going to do it, and my people are going to do it. Not that we should rely on other people to do it. We should stop. I'm saying we should stop outsourcing our defense to other people, because that's effectively what you guys have been doing, or what libertarians have been doing for 70 years now.
Right. So let's get into the specifics then. Where do you think is the best place to start in terms of discussing your strategy and specifically differentiating it from the idea that the prime, and of course, if this happened, it would be wonderful. Yeah. If somehow you turned the Republican Party into this, bash into libertarianism, and they were always talking about Mises and Rothbard, that would be awesome. But I think that's at best, that's at best like a dream that could happen maybe as a result of a lot of other things changing. But it's not the strategy that you, Tho, or anyone else puts forward. So why don't you just dig into your specific strategy?
Yeah. 2 or 3 major strategies will go in order. Basically, all of them are localism and a mixture of lobbying. The localism aspect is basically twofold, because number one, we are a small caucus with limited funds. And if you want to help us fund any of this, misesgop.com/donate. Please donate monthly. It helps a lot, even just small amounts. But the idea that we're going after is that, hey, we can use the Republican Party to get elected to a lot of local offices that have very real power and that nowadays really matter to people all of a sudden. And particularly in the school board elections, which are they're often partisan, and sometimes they're not. In Florida, they're not partisan. In Texas, they are partisan. And so in other words, if there are nonpartisan elections, you would not have like an L next to your name or an R next to your name or a D next to your name, and that makes it very difficult to identify who's who. So like in Florida, we still get a lot of kind of liberals in the school system because people can't identify them quickly. And
so do you see it as a benefit when there is an identifier, or because a lot of libertarians will say like, oh, we always win these races. The races we win are the ones where there's no identifier because they don't know we're these libertarians. So cool.
I have
so
a
it doesn't harm us.
For them, by the way, that what you really need in your local, and you can do this kind of through at least at the local government for nonpartisan elections, is that since the local government can theoretically control its own elections and its own ballot printing, what I would do is to say that, all right, if you want to get on. I would just pass an ordinance at the local level that says if you want to get on the ballot, you have to agree to a certain maximum amount of taxes per person that you will allow, and that number is going to appear next to your name on the ballot because that's a real price. That's a price now, because the problem with letters is it doesn't really tell you anything about what they believe. Whereas a number actually communicates real hardcore information that about this is the amount. And if, by the way, and they vote over it, if they go away from that, then they can't get back on the ballot. So by doing this, by the way, remember how the market usually works? Lowest price usually wins.
In theory.
So and let's think about it logically. How well do how much does enforcing natural rights really cost, which is what libertarians want to do and what conservatives nominally want to do. How much does that usually cost? Very little. So substantially less than the Democrats who are oh yeah, we can't wait to spend all your money for you. And it's if I just give you three numbers and I tell you that these are tax rates, and I tell you one of them's 10%, the next one's 18%, and the next one's 75%. You should be able to tell me which one of them is the Libertarian, the Republican, and the Democrat. Just from that number.
I think that's right. That's pretty clear. Yeah.
So by putting those numbers, and again, because lowest price normally wins, this gives Libertarians an advantage because all we want to do is defend your natural rights, and that's kind of cheap. So this would be one of the local government actions that I would try to attempt through the GOP. Why? Because this is going to help the GOP and screw over the Democrats, which is exactly what you're supposed to do in team sport politics. Because now the Republicans are nominally going to be thinking, oh yeah, we want to do a lot less, and they're going to be arguing for price because they'll think that they're the lowest price, and realistically they are because Mises GOP is running in the race, and our guys are going to want to have quite substantially less taxes. So lowest price usually wins, and I would love to give us the extra leg up just like that. And there are a whole bunch of how would I get people elected? Well, that's what I'm raising money for right now, because local elections are, particularly in rural areas, are generally very cheap. Like in my hometown of Florida in Lake County, the mayor of my hometown got elected in 2020 for $200.
Wow,
that's a little bit.
That was his actual budget.
Yeah, that was his actual spending was $200 for a town of 14,000 people, and and
he probably didn't even need the $200. I'm assuming he's the kind of guy that everyone in town knows, and he probably could have kept the $200. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, usually what it is it's a few yard signs to just get your name out there, and some tennis and a pair of tennis shoes to just knock on the doors. It's literally like $80 of that is probably tennis shoes. I would be
a suit from Ross Dress for Less.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even need a suit. I mean, not in Florida. God knows.
Yeah.
It's way too warm.
No one's making it door to door in a suit in Florida.
No. And but that's a little bit of an outlier. But usually the elections in like rural red state areas they run in the like $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 dollar amounts. And so when you have prices like that, when I say that, I just average it out to like 2,000. If I have like $2,000 per candidate that I'm putting towards them, that's basically a lock. As long as they are knocking on, they're just knocking on doors, and because what you do is you use it to like you can buy data with it, and you can say, okay, those are the Republican doors, and I need to go knock on those to get the base out, because these election turnout rates are like 10, 15, 20%. So if you just get the base out, and they're coming to the election anyway to vote, all you need to do is just get your base to check the box for you, and you're done. Because otherwise, most people, they just don't even complete the ballot. So all you need to do is get the people who are already going to vote to complete the ballot for you, and that's it. You win. And so you don't have to go convince moderates. You don't have to go convince Democrats. All you have to do is get the Republican base to just go for you, and you win.
So this kind of strategy, I imagine, would only really work in a place where it's already a GOP place. It's already a red city. It's already a red state. It's probably a shoo-in that the GOP candidate is going to win. So it's more about why this person from Mises GOP, the person with this strategy, should be that candidate. And then it's kind of just
effectively, yes. And and what people have figured out a lot, particularly since 2020, is that it really matters who's enforcing your laws. Because if your local government is like, yeah, cute mandate, Biden, we're not enforcing it. It's basically a letter to Santa. I mean, this is one of Michael Malice's best quotes, is that, when politicians write these laws without the cops, they're basically letters to Santa. And, so if I'm the one controlling the cops, and they follow orders no matter what, I really want a libertarian giving those orders. It's not that you want cops, it's not that you're not like pushing for privatization. It's that, it's that you recognize what's doable, and you can all agree on what the goal is, but you have to also agree on like what's doable right now. And people really want people in charge of them who are not going to be giving those totalitarian orders. They're not going to see COVID coming and be like, yay, we get to bail out the bankers. Mm-hmm. And, because that was Washington's first reaction. Like, oh my God, a deadly disease, quick, bail out Wall Street. It's like, they don't want those kinds of people in charge. And now that, all those kids came home and parents started seeing what their kids were actually learning, and they're like, holy fuck. Like, boy, are they royally pissed. Because with a lot of like right-wingers particularly, they're willing to take the bullshit from the left. They're willing to take the wokeism, at work, in order just like the sacrifice for their kids. This like, I'm taking the bullshit so I can, provide for my family. Mm-hmm. The moment the wokeism comes after their family, now that's a different story. It's like, because now that's the thing I'm sacrificing for. And now you just cross a real hardcore red line. And I see this as an opportunity. Our enemies have overstepped. It's time to purge the curriculum, so to speak. It's like, of course you should push for homeschooling, and you should push for private schooling and all that. That's all good, but we don't have that kind of power. And the power we can get is curriculum control. And because that's at the school board level, that's done at the school board level usually. And one thing I would love to do is say, all right, you're going, so it's been said that we're going to be teaching socialism in schools. Here's your new textbook. It's Socialism by Mises.
Socialism.
Yeah, exactly. And here's your new civics textbook, Anatomy of the State by Rothbard.
Short civics class, but yeah.
Great civics class, a whole lot to learn, and then we'll follow it with Hoppe's democracy. So it's like they'll know all about how democracy sucks, and they'll be So yeah, it's like, hey, that indoctrination game, you can play that game, and and I'm more than willing, and when I put this out on Twitter on the Mises GOP account, I was like baffled at how many people from like the LPMC were coming in and said, no, that's statism, that's wrong, you're not allowed to do that. And I'm just like, where are these people coming from? And like even when I talked to Dave, I put that idea out. He was like, "Oh, of course, that's like a no-brainer. Of course, we should teach Rothbard." So like, I don't even know where all these other people are getting it, because their leaders definitely don't believe that, and like Dave definitely doesn't believe that, and kind of like it just seems like such a no-brainer that, hey, we're being taxed. We don't have a choice in this matter. Like obviously we would all homeschool and private school if we could, but we can't. So we should do something about it. And they're feeding kids this garbage. They're trying to turn kids into like leftist soldiers for the revolution. So it's like, of course we should stop this. It's like, it's not enough that your kid isn't being turned into a leftist revolutionary. Like, we don't want any leftist revolutionaries. None of them should exist. It's like, certainly not children. And I think that's something we should all agree on. And hey, if they're going to be getting an education, then it might as well be a libertarian education. And I mean, that's something I strongly believe in, particularly from the Austrian tradition. Like, enough of Cato, enough of we don't need Cato, we don't need reason. The Mises Institute has all kinds of excellent materials that I 100% stand behind. These should be, and they're free too, so we can save money and lower taxes at the same time by saving on expensive textbooks. I'm sure that will make the textbook providers really happy, but oh well, fuck them.
So what? Obviously, like, this all sounds great. Like, it sounds great if you could just get some guys elected, some good libertarians in the GOP guys to be elected to school boards and such. But what about the pushback? I mean, I don't think it's necessarily going to be as easy. What about even in a small town where you could presumably win with a couple $100? What about when because even in a small town you have the old boys clubs, the networks of people that want to protect their positions. So how do you deal with where maybe you got $500, $2,000, whatever it may take to win, but the old boys club says, yeah, but this is our club. So
this is where you start needing to network. And we actually do need to be pushing our ideas. This is something I couldn't admire Tho Bishop any more than what he does with the Republican Party, because what he does is he sets up meetings for the Republican Party as its vice president of Bay County, Florida, and he uses that position and that platform in order to just set up meetings where he can just basically read Rothbard to people, and the Republicans like, yeah, this guy Rothbard's so great, yeah, we love him. And it's like they've never heard of him before. They have no idea that he's an anarchist, and so I'm not going to mention it, but but when they hear Rothbard, particularly 90s Rothbard talking, they're like, yeah, this makes a ton of sense. Of course, of course it works that way. And so, like, when you are engaging with those good old boys clubs, what you really need, and this is something that Tho makes the point he makes all the time, which is excellent, about Andrew Jackson. That I mean, or like even Ron DeSantis, who's kind of like the second Andrew, and the reincarnation of Andrew Jackson, where like what they do is you get the people behind you. It's like the people, the voters, they're with you, and you like almost create a cult of personality around yourself, and because you are out there pushing, and you see Anthony Sabatini in Florida doing the same exact thing, and I can tell you right now, he has all of Lake County with him in lockstep, and they are never going to vote him out, because now they have a real fighter who actually knows his stuff and is not afraid. They will absolutely, they are with him to the end. And so that's how you defeat the good old boys club. Is once you in power, you use that platform, exactly the same way Tho Bishop did, the way Andrew Jackson did. Yes, I am using Tho Bishop and Andrew Jackson in the same sentence because they deserve to be. And and you get the people behind you, and you use them as like a billy club to beat the good old boys over the head with, and you say, hey, it's my way or my way.
So is it almost like just get into power first, sneak in, and then rally that base by being the fucking man, by doing everything that they're going to want to see you do.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what you do. And there's all kinds of things you can do that will really get the people on your side, that's how I would start shoving a lot of the policy that I really want through, like privatization. Pete and I talk all the time about Hoppe's "What Must Be Done" strategy, which is basically get elected to the local government and privatize it. Privatize everything. And 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 one of the things the Hopper proposes, which I was shocked I got pushback on this as well. That when I said that we should limit the any bill that comes through that wants to raise property taxes for people needs to be voted on by only property taxpayers. So only property owners. It seems like a no-brainer because they're going to be like, of course I'm not voting for that. It's like it really just seems like a no-brainer, but I get all kinds of pushback on it.
Pushback from like libertarians?
Libertarians on the Mises GOP account. I say stuff like that, and they're like, "No, what you need to be doing is pushing for like full abolition." And I'm like, okay, let's get back to reality where this is not possible. And it's like at least not yet. It's like I'd love for it to be, but we're just not there yet. And I do have a plan for that, by the way, but that's going to take some time. And but by the way, there was one place that Reason magazine, Reason on their YouTube page, they actually did a really good thing for once, where they had an expose of Sandy Springs, Georgia, which is known as the town that privatized everything, that did just that. And granted, they were formed that way so that they naturally privatized everything, but from the get go. But how they did it is actually a really interesting way that I think we should, that's a way we could follow. That if you are in they were a part of Atlanta, Georgia, they did not want to be a part of Atlanta, Georgia. They managed to get themselves extricated from Atlanta, Georgia, and then they formed their own municipality that way. And then when they formed their municipality, they're like, okay, we're going to start by privatizing everything except the police. And there's also a whole bunch of other private cities in the United States, like the Villages, Florida. It is not a municipality. It is like owned by a private corporation. It is like an entire large segment of land in Sumter County, which is entirely private. And and it's a like old folks place. So basically, it's like a 55 and up covenant community, and it's also the U.S. capital for STDs because everyone is over 55, so they can't get pregnant, and they have bottomless supplies of Viagra.
Is that true?
STD capital of America. So
that is hilarious, frightening, and
gross.
And super gross, actually. Yeah.
This is what you come to me for, Marc.
I mean, STDs are already gross, but
this is the sort of libertarian community I envision.
So the villages with maybe some younger people and less STDs. It's kind of what we're looking at. Hopefully less STDs.
And because of that, no taxes. And this is where I did my internship at Merrill Lynch. Was in the villages. And the reason that I think that's
you must be cleaning up, and you must have been cleaning up in there, huh?
Well, actually, it was great. I mean, like those guys, all that retirement money, it was amazing. But the thing about the villages that the Florida legislature really likes is that they vote 2-1 Republican, because these are mostly Northern Republicans who move down and they want to have a very well affordable warm and well affordable retirement. So you move to Florida with no income tax, and now because we're in the villages, no local tax either. And so they move there in order to maximize the retirement savings, but in the process they vote 2-1 Republican, and they donate, more importantly, 3-1 Republican. So the Florida legislature loves them, and they all watch Fox News, so they're nice and non-threatening. So it's basically boomers and golf carts and Republican voters who love Fox News. It's like, this is perfect for them. And this is like the sales pitch I would take to the Florida legislature for saying why you should let us do this with a whole bunch of other municipalities, because we want to attract these boomers with their dollars and their Republican votes. Republican dollars, Republican votes in a Republican state, makes sense to a Republican legislature and a Republican, Governor Ron DeSantis, who is a populist and understands a good idea when he sees it.
So would this strategy entail kind of just first finding the community or certain property owners getting together in a certain community to the point that they already have the support to do this, and then essentially just bringing that to the legislature, being like, hey, look at the villages. Can we do that too? We'll vote for Republicans.
That's kind of the basic idea behind my Antiattacks. This is a way to do that, to where I can make this villages model even better. Because with the villages model, it really is like a kind of a special economic zone where there is no taxation, not anti-taxation, no taxation. Whereas, like, I've talked about this, I think a little bit on the last time. I'm not sure if I did, but my idea of the anti-tax is, how would you, if you were going to fund a government, how would you do it without taxation of any kind? Like, not even user fees. Yeah, and the idea was that hey, you have 19,500 local governments in the United States. That's like municipalities. Local, by that, that's what we call local government. There's also like school boards and other stuff like that. We're not talking about that right now. But as far as municipalities are concerned, they all have every one of them is supposed to have about 8 to 14 months of taxes already collected on hand as like kind of a buffer for in case the sales tax doesn't do well or something like that. And usually, it's about 8 to 14 months worth of taxation. So if you're so anyway, what I propose is that since there's
do you find that, do most, I know they're supposed to do that. Do most municipalities actually do that, or they just like do it on paper?
Yes, because they're kind of required to by law. Mm-hmm. And so the at least in like Florida and Texas, I know they have to. So the idea, and so the you depending on, if they're really, really small, they might not have to, but that you're talking like less than 5,000 people or something like that. Really small municipalities. But so but if you're like a 14,000, like where I was in Lake County, Florida, that's a that's you definitely have to, and you definitely have those reserves on hand. I know because I've checked their balance sheets. Gotcha. So what I propose to do with that is, right now by law, they're not supposed to be investing that money in anything that generates a decent return. So they're allowed to put it into like CDs and T-bills, and if they're getting really aggressive, they're allowed to the riskiest asset that they're allowed to put it into is like bonds from the state of Israel. Yeah, of course. And that's like the one exception.
It sounds like a joke you would have written, but it's not.
It's not. I guarantee it's not.
Israeli bonds. Wow.
Yeah, it's like the one like even kind of non-ultra safe asset.
Feeling lucky tonight, Bruce? Yeah, Israeli bonds. Let's do it.
Exactly. And so so I would go to the state legislature, and my proposal with the anti-tax is, well, what if we actually put that into like an actual pension plan or something like that, and we created a passive income stream for these local governments that could take the place of taxation. So as compounding interest grows, the fund grows larger. They can and again, this is all taxes that have already been collected, so you don't necessarily have to raise taxes for it. I do advocate raising taxes for it, but that's a different reason.
So what happens to this money now? It just sits somewhere not collecting interest? It just sits in like some account, like a checking account?
Yeah. I mean, no, it collects inflation.
Actually,
not only is it collecting like virtually 0% interest, APR every year, it's collecting inflation at like 7 to 9%, or whatever it actually is right now, because we all know the Fed bullshits its numbers. So right now, it's like you have a guaranteed loss for the taxpayers, guaranteed. And my idea is, okay, the stock market grows at about an average of 10% a year. Some of that's a little bit, and the volatility is greatly overstated. And what the pension plans do is called diversification, to where you have a whole bunch of asset classes that are completely uncorrelated, like the stock market and the housing market they're not correlated. That like one does not affect the other. If the stock market goes down, nothing can happen. The real estate market is just like unaffected. So they will just spread all of their money out over these uncorrelated asset classes in order to get like no volatility. So you earn a little bit less that way, but you have substantially lower volatility, to where like a stock market crash does not impact anybody. Like it does not impact the teachers at all. And so as long as you can keep that, and they usually earn like 6, 7, 8% a year just by that. Like basically like clockwork, to where a crash doesn't affect them, and and everyone gets their money, and there's no volatility, there's no panic or anything like that. So you escape the the fear of the market that way. So if you're investing it, so like let's say you only take like 3% out a year, so you're just like covering inflation or something like that. That's still a real cut. That now that people don't have to pay for inflation every year, that's a big deal. And particularly because inflation's been so low for the past few years, because we're at the end of a debt super cycle. But as again, that's a little bit dated, but now that there is real inflation, now we have a real argument for saying that okay, now by having these state laws, which were written 70 years ago, when or actually longer than that, they were written a long time ago when interest rates were substantially higher, so the laws actually made sense. But like when they were written, the laws made sense because the interest rates were so much higher and they were way above inflation.
Sure.
This is not the case anymore. And now these same exact laws that were good back then are not good anymore. And they're guaranteeing the taxpayers losses every year, heavy losses every year. And so what we should do is take this concept of, hey, we should be allowed to create sovereign wealth funds, mix it with this concept of the villages and special economic zones. And in order to attract all of these boomer Republicans who love Fox News, down from these shithole blue states that you're very familiar with, and it's like they don't have to be boomers; they can be like Clint from the Pre-Lockdown or Marc Clair. We would love to have young guys too. And
I'm only 14 years away from qualifying for the villages, but maybe I won't need to wait that long. If you can get one of these in place, I won't need to wait that long.
Exactly, and that with this idea, like now we can take this idea to this. So now the governments are not losing out on any money anymore, because with the anti-tax, they don't have to cut taxes anymore. Now there's a real disconnect between taxation and spending, direct taxation, that is, and so this idea that because the anti-tax is is productivity. And the government, instead of being like fully predatory, is like slightly productive. At least not, or I should say, not fully counterproductive. Mm-hmm. Now that they're in this status, hey, this is money that the taxpayers do not have to pay, and so you get the benefit of government for free, basically. And again, no free lunch. We're not going that far, but by taking this presentation to the state government, we can get laws changed that make it a lot easier for us to start privatizing these things and saying, hey, because we're not selling them, Libertarian and Capistan anymore. We're selling them boomers and golf carts.
Right. So are you specifically, because they already have one of these in place, essentially focusing on Florida first for that reason? Because look, it's already here. You don't need to imagine it. We already have this thing.
They're like my number one target because they have everything is ready to go there. And but I would never limit it to Florida, but Florida certainly my number one target.
And you got people pouring in, like me and Clint, Top Lobster, like the kind of people that might want to live in the kind of community like this.
Oh, Top Lobster, he just moved to just by chance to like just a few miles away from where I grew up.
He's right outside of Orlando.
Yeah, like Ocala. That was real close to where I lived. I had like maybe 10 minutes, and so so hey, you need to watch out for the bears and wolves and snakes and alligators and all that other stuff
and all the wildlife. Yeah, stay inside, but otherwise.
Yeah, some guy from the Bronx doesn't kind of know about that. He's really good at navigating the hood, but these are different kinds of wild animals.
Yeah, so, you have animals in both, but
oh yeah, and anyway. So but once we can implement these ideas anywhere, because we know how tax competition works. If you look at like a geographic map of, I should say, a political map of the United States, and you plot out all of the municipal tax rates, or even this works with county tax rates and school board tax rates as well. That if you plot them next to each other, they don't differ that much. Like they're usually pretty close to each other. And the reason is because it's real easy to move 4 or 5 miles in one direction and get a completely different tax status. You know what I mean? And so that's why they have to keep them relatively similar. And of course, there's spending that goes along with that, because you're creating value for the customers, or really the voters, so to speak. But but because there's 19,500 of them, municipalities and over 3,000 counties in the United States, because of that, there's so much competition forces that actually make it work and actually keep the value prospects relatively similar. So what happens, when you implement an anti-tax and a tax-free society, and a kind of this villagization of Florida, what would happen is that now that I've because there's competition forces, now everybody has to do it. So I can get basically all of Florida for the price of just a few. That when we if we implement this, basically we can let competition forces do all of the heavy lifting for us. Because if the other people don't, then they're going to lose all of their voters who are going to move out of their cities, out of their towns, and then they lose their power. They don't want that. So better that they adopt these policies, willingly without us having to get elected. Than having to either fight us for it, which they're not going to win, or they have to, or just not doing it at all. So, and once Florida does it, other Republican states are going to be looking at that like, should we? And the blue states are definitely going to be looking at that like, oh, fuck no. Because going from 13% income tax rate to 0 in from California to Florida is really, really something, but imagine going from like 13% to like negative 13%. because we in Florida we have a property tax that kind of takes the place of an income tax. But imagine that was just not there at all. So like you would be going from like 13% to like negative 13%. That's a huge drop. And so the way you would so again, this is only for the local government. So how would you extend this to like your school board, your county, to your state, etc.? Well, you would just go to them and say, hey, how about you get in on this? You know what I mean? You would say that, hey, how about you put a direct substitution tax on this anti-tax fund? We'll let you do it. We'll give you a cut of it every year that goes towards substituting for my other school board, county, state level taxes, et cetera, et cetera. And so now you could, by doing it that way and by centering the fund down at the sovereign wealth fund down at the local level and simply instituting direct taxes onto it, there are that again take the place for other taxes, you could theoretically get to a zero tax state, and that's a huge thing. Now, but again, so like, okay, well, what do you do about spending? My first thing I would say is this is a revenue solution, not a spending solution. We still need to get libertarians and all that elected for the spending side of the equation, but but for local government, it's a little bit easier because you can institute this law that says, hey, if we're giving you these special privileges to take these risks on behalf of the taxpayer and all that, then you need to give them some certainty that the risk is going to be worth it, and that you're not going to just raise taxes on them later. So you would say like, okay, you maybe just give the voters like a veto over taxes or something like that. That at the state level or something like that, that they're going to accept this, then then the local government has to like promise that they're not going to raise spending, and if they do, they have to run it by the taxpayers and put it on a ballot referendum or something like that, and that would be your way of controlling it. And so I don't think we'd ever be able to do straight up prohibit it. That would be nice, but let's be realistic. Just instituting any sort of control mechanism to where they at least have to run it by the voters, or preferably the property taxpayers, first. That would be a pretty reasonable solution. I think they would go for, and that so once you have something like this in there, hey, competition forces are still a real thing, and you're going to start, and then you could go to other states and say, hey, if you don't, by the way, like Florida and Texas, they have a really asshole kind of program. It's a real dick move to do to other states, where you get your governors, you get all your decision makers together in one room, and you send them to other companies in other states, to their boardrooms, and say, hey, if you move your company from state X to my state in Florida or Texas, then we will give you a special tax break. So this is something that they actually already do, without the anti-tax, and by giving them the anti-tax, I'm giving them a much better way of doing it, and much more effective, much more efficient. And so they already have this kind of mentality where they try to steal businesses from other states, and so I'm giving them a substantially better way of doing it, and is doing something they were already doing. And so that like other states are going to have to do we need to implement this just so that we stop Florida and Texas from stealing all of our businesses? The answer is yes, of course they do. And so if you can just get Florida, you can get all of the other red states too. You're never going to get the blue states on it. This is not for urban areas. If you're living in any place controlled by Democrats, your solution is move. I'll just go straight.
This isn't going to work in Los Angeles.
This will not work
San Francisco or
will not
New
work
York
there.
City.
Yeah, it will not work in any place that votes blue regularly. If you're in a
possibly even any major city, because I think any major city has their own establishment, their own powers, whether they're blue or not. They're blue in a sense.
Yeah, but that's but again, that's like one of the best parts is that okay, well now we're going to be stealing businesses from the Democrats too, which is great. It's like good, fuck them. And so I'm all for that. Again, reward your friends and punish your enemies. I get pushback on that one too, but hey, that's how liberty is done. Like liberty happens when good people have power. That's just how that works. There's no getting rid of it.
Let's get more into the punish your enemies part, because that is, like you said, that's the part you get pushback on. That's that's the part where people say, "Oh, Andrew's this little fascist here coming up and wants to beat down his enemies in the street." So let's be specific. How can you use the anti-tax to define the enemies and define the punishment? Let's get out exactly what you mean when you say that, so we don't just get the.
There's several ways you could do it, because and that is consistent with a libertarian principle and libertarian ethic. So the idea that you would as libertarians, we believe that all taxes are basically equivalent because they are all equally distortions of the market. Some are substantially worse than others, like in their social ramifications, like income tax versus a spending tax. Income tax incentivizes people to just not be productive at all, and which is like it's far more contrary to human nature than like a spending tax, which is something people don't really want to spend. They don't really want to do that. They like to have savings and some sort of buffer. It helps them with their anxiety and all that to have a nice spending buffer or something like that. But because if all taxes are effectively equivalent, though, they're at least equivalently distorting. What I would do is say that, all right, well, okay, let's find out first, where is the enemy and how do we punish them? So what I would propose is that, well, since lefties tend to really like urban areas, and again, population density is like the number one predictor of leftism. More than any other is like where you live geographically in that urban density is the number one predictor, because that's that mindset. You're all on top of each other. You do not have space. You cannot trust each other. And
this tracks everywhere you go. I mean, even I spent 3 months living in Mexico City. I don't think Mexico has the same concepts of blue and red as we do. But as far as I'm concerned, it's the bluest damn city I've ever been, because everywhere I went, I saw a mask. Mandate or no. Mask. It felt like the bluest place I could ever imagine.
Yeah, it's a function of human nature. You even go back and see the stuff in the Bible, but we won't go there right now. But this is old. This is this is everywhere you look, anytime you look.
That could be a 2-hour deep dive on its own. So
urban areas are always like the lefty secular ones. So so we can use that to our advantage, especially with a property tax. So I advocate what I call a progressive tax. Progressive taxation. By that I mean taxing progressives. Because of course.
You said you wanted progressive taxation. You said if we wanted to teach socialism, I'm giving you what you wanted, everybody.
Yeah, you give the people what they voted for. Exactly. They voted to raise taxes, and I raised their taxes, of course. They voted for it. And so what I would do is a population density tax. In the property tax, I would make the property tax progressive in the sense that it progresses upward based on how dense your population area is. And because it's progressive, that means the other side is lower. So I would say that so not only can I use the anti-tax to substitute for taxation, I can also just move the other taxation to the left.
How would you get that implemented in a high density area? Like, how would it high density area?
At the state red level, I would say that okay, so the state of Florida has its own state property tax, and there's a separate county property tax, and a separate municipal property tax. So so you couldn't do it at the municipal or county level, but you could do it at the state level, where you said that, all right, my state income tax, or my state property tax, these are going to be progressive now, and they're going to progress based on population density. The more of an urban area you live in, the higher your taxes are going to be, the more suburban and rural you are, the less it's going to be. And so the idea is that, so not only are you like taking not only are you taking like the bottom line up, you're taking the top line down. So
which actually somewhat tracks, because if you're living in a big city, that is where you're using all the stuff, the public transportation, the whatever it may be. Whereas if you are living out in the country, like, you're probably just providing pretty much for yourself anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need big states. They're not there. You're not using the services, and people should pay for what they're using. But more importantly, our enemies should be poorer than we are. And because again, wealth is power. Wealth buys you power, wealth buys you influence, and so if our enemies are wealthy and they're doing great, you have to understand these people are predators. They're not just producers; they are predators too, and they will use their production to fund their predation. And so in order to really take power away from them, you need to physically take. Like they cannot be allowed to get wealthy. They cannot, because that's power that they will necessarily use against us. And this is not like some theoretical thing. Again, we all lived through COVID in 2020, so this is not like theoretical anymore. This is happening, and it's been happening for like hundreds of years. But like now, it's like just completely undeniable that the left really wants control. They want power in a way the right simply doesn't. And this is what I call a high time preference for power, is that they are wanting to basically squander the resources of civilization on predation. They think that the government should basically control everything, and they look forward to the day when we're all wearing gunny suits and so we can get a leader. And the right kind of just wants to be left alone, and they just want to kind of live their life the way they do and raise their kids the way they want to raise them. And the left isn't even willing to let them do that, because now the left is like, oh, we want to teach your kids to be like gay and transsexual and and hate white people, and that as like they're not even allowed to raise their own kids anymore. And so I would just take one look at this. Like, the right they do not want that kind of power over me. The left clearly does. I can separate between right and left, and I just want to say, hey, let's punish them. Let's move the taxes that the right has been paying to the left, and which is what they were voting for. Because the right wants to vote for lower taxes. They want to vote for in their minds, when they say they're voting for small government, they think they're voting for defending your natural rights. That a small government is all you need for defending natural rights. In reality, they're voting for the biggest government in history, because when you restrain the government, you necessarily grow the government. We had the biggest government in human history, not because the Constitution failed, but because it worked. Which is the bitter irony of it, that the more you restrain the government, the less predation it's able to do. You are necessarily leaving more for the people who are producers and are going to be productive with it. That grows the pie. That grows the amount of tax revenue that the state can collect. And because of you're growing the amount of tax revenue the state can collect, now you have a much more powerful state. So in restraining the government, you actually make the government substantially bigger and substantially more powerful.
What would you say to libertarians, out there, living in a big city, or they own an apartment? They say, Andrew, why you got to come in and rain on my parade? Like, I'm a libertarian. I like living in the city. Why do you want to tax me more?
Hey, that sounds like your problem, man. It's like, I got my people, I got my tribe. All of us are voting for paying less, and all of you except you are basically everyone except you where you live is voting to be my enemy and to tax me. And I don't see why that my people and me and my people should have to live in a way we really don't want to, because basically your people minus you are imposing your ways upon us. If the city's imposing their urban ways on the suburbs and on the rural areas.
Pretty much every state works this way in some way, shape, or form, where the big cities leech off and abuse the rest of the state.
Yeah. And my thought is, I don't believe in that. And, sorry if you get caught up in it, but whoops, I suppose you have the right to defend yourself, or, from the tax man, or you have the right to move. And I recommend moving. because I'm
We
a
all recognize that.
yeah, I'm a rural supremacist. I believe, I believe in I believe in the country. I look down on cities. I think they're third world liberal shitholes, and so I do not believe in urbanization at all. So it's like I don't really want to. I don't want to impose my ways on other people. If they want to live in the city, that's fine. But I have to defend myself, and this is how I'm going to do that. But of course, if you want to move here with me and take part in the anti-tax, that'd be great. Then you can pay no taxes.
I also heard you when you discussed this with Pete and Dave a few months ago. I know one thing you were talking about too is utilizing this anti-tax to not just on population density, but also on certain behaviors, like progressive behaviors or actions. Can you dig into that a little bit more?
So the idea, one of the ideas I came up with a while back was, what if you, what do you do about censorship? Big tech censorship. Well, I would love to have this fight in the Supreme Court where hey, what if we tried, because right now you have Section 230 that does not allow you to, doesn't allow you to, the states to regulate the big tech companies or whatever. Well, I didn't say anything about taxing them. And so the idea I thought of was, well, okay, the Supreme Court has held repeatedly that the power to tax is virtually unlimited, not entirely unlimited, but virtually unlimited. So I was thinking, what if every time they remove that Twitter removes a comment on Twitter for political reasons? Well, what if there was a $5 fine on that, and they're removing a few million of them a day? I can see how that's going to go. And what if every time they ban a profile, we penalize them, $1 per follower or something like that. And so every time they remove, if they remove Donald Trump, it's $100 million fine. Yeah, 100 million followers or something like that, maybe in the future.
So what's your response to, but Andrew, these are private companies and you're just advocating statism. You're no better than someone on the left advocating a preference that they want be enforced by the state.
Very true, unless I have an anti-tax, because if I have an anti-tax, then all I'm doing is collecting taxes ahead of time. So it'd be because this thing works based on compounding interest and this thing grows across time to substitute for taxation. That this is not an additional tax. This is a substitution tax. So by applying all of that revenue that I would get from from taxing big tech and on their censorship, on their acts of censorship, which are clearly bad for society, and by funneling all of that money into the anti-tax, all I'm really doing is collecting taxes ahead of time. I'm speeding up the process by which taxation becomes obsolete. And because it's like collecting 2 years of taxes in 1 year and then not collecting any in the next year. That's all I'm doing.
All right, I want to take a question real quick because I did right before we kind of whipped this show together on the fly. So I posted real quick in the Lions Liberty Pride, our Patreon Facebook group, see if there's any questions. And we were talking about this for the show. Facebook is so frustrating. It says there's a few questions. I can only see one. So I don't know what's going on, but I'll read the one I can see. Well, another reason to find these out. So you should find them every time they hide comments from me. So sorry for whoever's comments were hidden. But Kevin asks, he says, the biggest complaint with the LPMC, the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus, is that they don't actually have any plans to get people elected. So what are your tangible plans to leverage GOP MC to get liberty-minded GOP candidates into office? Basically, it's why is your plan, which also hasn't happened yet, any more fantastical than the plans of those in the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus to do the same thing in their local municipalities?
The main difference would be that for there are partisan elections in the local governments that are you would have to run as a Republican for. And again, if I'm looking to make these things partisan, if I'm looking to put numbers next to the names that actually tell people real things, tell people real information, then necessarily I'm going to want to be with a bigger party. Because there's again, there are elections like school board and all that where you need to be a Republican to get elected. Usually, sometimes they're nonpartisan, but usually they're partisan elections. And if I want to go at the state level, eventually I'm gonna have to build my way up there. But eventually, I'd like to run people for state office and all that. The thing I really would want to do is have people in the Republican Party again, like Phil Bishop, because once you have this platform that where you are elected, now you need to go turn to the people in order to really exercise your power against the good old boys club. You need to be able to pivot and talk to the Republican base and pull Andrew Jackson's and Ron DeSantis's on and Trump's on people, because that was that's the power of your Phil Bishop model, which is that you pivot to the people and get all of them behind you, and you can't do that if you're wearing the enemy flag. Like, and make no mistake, when you're wearing the Libertarian Party flag, you might as well be wearing the Democrat Party flag. Not because they're like a whole bunch of, it's like a leftist haven, but it is. But that's not the reason why. The reason why is that democracy is a perpetual civil war. And when you're saying that you need to be on my team, you're saying that you need to be on my side in the civil war. So when you're arguing for a third party, you are necessarily arguing for having the smaller, weaker army in a civil war. It's like, this is not the position you really want to be in. And
by the same token, the Democrats are going to look at the Libertarians and say, "Oh, these GOP assholes." So it's like you almost can't win.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, who are you going to pivot to? How are you going to exercise your power once you have it? Because it's not enough to just formally have power. You actually need to be able to use it and marshal it. And the way you do that is by getting people on your side. And you have to be able to do what Phil Bishop does, which is, hey, I'm a Republican. I have the American flag on my lapel, and and I'm clearly a right winger who's like very educated and really wants to fight. And people really love that, even if they don't agree with you entirely. Like take Ron Paul. Like, most of people who voted for him, they did not agree with him on everything, and they really respected him because they're like, okay, this man has principles and he will fight.
And he delivered my baby too. So
well, not even that many. It's like, I mean, it's a 750,000 person district. He did not deliver that many. And I really think that part gets overblown. I really think it's because the Texas 14 district, which is like where I live, this is a very right-wing district. I mean, this is like a 15-point Republican district, and and so this is going to go Republican no matter what. Like, this is a hardcore right district, and Ron Paul comes across as like Baptist Christian, like really right wing, means it, and he will fight, and he's scrappy, and so voters will see stuff like that, and this is the Andrew Jackson effect. This is the Phil Bishop effect, where Anthony Sabatini, Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, when they see fighters, like, even if they don't agree with him all the way, and Donald Trump was famous for this, was like, yeah, he's kind of an asshole, but you know what, it works. It's like they do not have to agree with you. That's like kind of the magic. This is my ace in the hole for against the LPNC. People do not have to agree with you to vote for you.
So I don't think I've ever met a Trump supporter who said, like, I think Donald Trump is a great guy and I agree with everything. I think he's fucking. I know most of them say, I actually don't really like the guy. I think he's kind of a scumbag and I don't really agree with half what he says, but goddamn, does he fight?
Yeah, and that was a big thing for like the evangelicals. Was like, he's like a philandering adulterer, and he's kind of a scumbag. He's definitely not a Christian at all, and but hey, he doesn't want me and my culture eradicated from the face of the earth like the Democrats do, and he's willing to fight on my behalf, even though he doesn't agree with me on certainly Christianity, and but that was like a really big thing, and they will like and they would like die for him basically just because he would fight for them, and they had nobody else to fight for them. So this is the appeal of an Anthony Sabatini, a Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, or a Phil Bishop, or Andrew Jackson, because because these are people who will fight for you, and in a civil war, that's exactly what you need. And so when you are saying that I don't want you, like when you're running as a libertarian, what you are telling these people who would otherwise vote for you is that I don't want to fight for you. I'm not on your team. I'm on team enemy, and I'm going to be fighting against you because I think you're wrong, and I think your team is wrong. And to them, that spells defeat. And they do not want to listen to you. They want to defeat you. And it's why, like in New Hampshire, this happened repeatedly, where libertarians would run as Republicans, and then once they got elected, they would switch their party label, like, haha, I tricked you, I'm a libertarian, and next election they lost.
And they're gone, yeah, because then everybody says, what the fuck? You tricked me.
You lied to me, you're team enemy. And so And by the way, like this also happened in New Hampshire, where like they had that one sheriff race where it was like some trans Satanist ran as a Republican and won.
Yeah.
It's like because people just not even checking. Like not only do they not have to agree with you, they don't even have to know what you believe at all. It's like so it doesn't matter. It's like the fact that that they disagree with you does not matter in terms of
get your name on there. That's really what it is.
If you're willing to fight for them on anything, that like remotely smells of Republican or smells of conservative, they'll vote for you. And again, you see this like with Donald Trump, and like you saw this with Andrew Jackson. You see this with like Ron Paul. People don't have to agree with you to vote for you. This is like an unanswerable argument that the LPNC guys do not have a response for this. That people that they're more than willing to give you power repeatedly, as long as you'll even kind of fight for them. And so
maybe that's really the problem with the strategy of let me beat everyone over the head with the ideas of liberty, the ideas with my philosophy, and just make sure that no matter what, I prove to them I'm right. Well, then first they see all you're doing is trying to prove yourself right, but then they also see, well, this guy's not fighting for me. This guy just wants to prove himself right to me. He's not a fighter, so of course that isn't going to work.
He's not fighting for me. He's fighting me. It's a really gigantic distinction.
And he won't even listen to me until I promise to read this human action book.
Yeah, it's like which is like what was it, like a 600 or 700 page tome?
Well, I think I have an edition, a physical edition that's over 1,000 pages. I don't know, that one might include some other addendums or something. But
it's been a long time since I read it, but I remember it being really long. And so like Man, Economy, and State, that thing's like 1,000. That thing was a fucking.
Or maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, I might be thinking about the Man, Economy, and State 1,000 pager that I have.
But yeah, and I've read that too. But so like even if you were to get elected in a nonpartisan race, you still need to be able to pivot to the people in order to get them behind you, so that you can beat the good old boys club, and which definitely exists everywhere. And so like even if you get power, you're not going to be able to use it as a libertarian because you don't have that ability to pivot to the people. And so like there is no way for them to get power. Whereas like with me, again, I told you it was like $1,000 to $3,000, usually somewhere around 2, buys you a seat. And and yeah, misesgop.org/donate if you want to help us donate monthly. We are one of the guys we want to run is Buck Johnson from the Counterflow podcast. He's running in Lockhart. He will be announcing his candidacy soon in Lockhart. I talked to him yesterday.
All right, so it's official now. We can actually say that out loud.
Not official because he still has to announce it. But
by the time this airs, this won't air right away. This will air so maybe the Pride will know, and then if he's announced by the time it airs, I'll add a little note. This is actually happening. But
I'm told he's announcing his exploratory committee, so to speak.
All right.
And we know what that means. So. But yeah, what we want to do is be raising about like $5 a month, and in order to raise like enough to fund like 5 elections, with like a Buck Johnson, and so when you add that up over a 24-month cycle, you're talking well over 100 libertarians an election cycle that we could elect and start getting this ball of the anti-tax and all these other local policies running, because I really want a full-blown private law society. I think that's something that gets lost a lot, is that, when I'm saying, hey, we need to, use this, but we need to use the state that we have, because we just got to play the card we're dealt. But we understand the goal is a private law society, like in the Rothbardian Hopkins sense, late Rothbard, not early Rothbard, but late Rothbard and, in the Hopkins sense, like I want a private law society that's that. And this is the way I see him getting to that, to where, we're going to have to, we have to push that back. We have to start privatizing stuff. We have to start somewhere. And this, and I think if we had been doing this for, even the last 20 years, 2020 wouldn't have happened. This would have been a very, if we I asked this question to Dave Smith when I kind of debated him. It wasn't a debate, but he seemed to want to make it a debate. But, I asked him this question, like, would you rather...
That's my fault. I've trained Dave that anytime 2 people are on a show together, it's a debate. So you can blame that on me.
Sure. But anyway, my question to him was, would you rather, like you're saying you want to run and spread the message as the Libertarian, president, and, and have this new Ron Paul movement, et cetera, et cetera. I'll just give you that because you're a brilliant communicator, by far the best communicator in the movement. So what if, let's say you converted, a million people to like way more than Ron Paul. Ron Paul was like in the like hundreds of thousands, what if you converted and a million new people to like the Misesian libertarianism. So we're not even the Cato stuff like the Mises type.
Right.
So what if would you prefer that, or would you prefer to have 10,000 Misesian mayors? And it's like again, 19,500 municipalities in the United States. Let's say we had like 10,000 of them were hardcore Misesian mayors. Would you rather have that or a million? They're not mutually exclusive. You could theoretically have both. Which would you prefer? And he gave the same answer I did. That I'd rather have that power because 2020 does not happen. If you have 10,000 like hardcore Mises Caucus mayors, 2020 doesn't happen. Like that is not a thing. This is a radically different country. With just that. And that's just the mayor. That doesn't count the rest of the city council. That doesn't count the county officials or the state level representatives or the governor. But even just like 10,000 Misesian mayors, this is a very different country. And we have way lower taxes, way lower regulations, way lower government impositions of every kind. Because now we control the cops. So guess what? Another thing I wanted to do was a backdoor repeal of a civil asset forfeiture, because like the way the laws are written right now, that if you want to get your property back from them, they have to fund you a certain amount of money that's usually like really low, like $500 or something like that. Well, how about we raise that to $10,000? And so that because it's not a full repeal. I'd love to get rid of just get rid of it altogether, but I have to recognize what's possible. So if I can just get my one libertarian mayor in there who says, hey, these are other people's property. We really shouldn't be taking it from them if they haven't been convicted. So we don't want to have, just like get rid of this process because maybe the cops could use it for a good reason. Maybe that's why I think it's nebulous, but convincing other people of this is going to be a little bit more difficult because everyone's scared of drug dealers. They think they're bad guys. But we say, okay, well, what if they're really not drug dealers? We need to have some way to make sure that the property really does get back to them. So instead of 500, we're just going to make the number 10,000 because that incentivizes the local government and the cops to just hand it back to them without any sort of fighting. Because if they fight them for it, then they have to pay them $10,000, and that's just not worth it. And because they probably didn't collect that much money from the drug dealers or whatever, or the alleged drug dealers, I should say, who were not convicted or whatever. And and you can do stuff like that, where you just have, if you just use your cleverness and you use your charisma, you get the people behind you, and you can make reasonable changes that have massive impacts. Just like that. You don't even need to get rid of civil asset forfeiture. You just make sure that people can get their property back, and you've effectively repealed it. And there's all kinds of things that we can do like that from the local level. If we had 10,000 hardcore Mises Caucus mayors, GOP Mises Caucus mayors, I should say, this is a very, very different country. And that's what I'm raising money for right now. And again, if you help me, I want to get to at least be able to elect $5 a month. And that's going to be my little slogan or whatever, $5. Imagine like him posing with like 5 different things. Anyway,
it only takes 5.
Yeah.
To get a buck on your side. I don't know. It's working.
Yeah, exactly. So $5 a month helps me elect $5 a month. Anyway.
There you go.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like if we can get here, we can radically change this country. It's like, and I'm here as a nominally libertarian, not a post-libertarian, but a Praxian, to get this ball rolling the way it should have been for the last 20 years. Because if we've been electing these guys for the last 20 years, this is the wars don't happen, the police state doesn't happen, the COVID tyranny doesn't happen, et cetera, et cetera. This is a completely different history that would have happened if we just started back then when Papa came out with this idea because a lot of these aren't even the anti-tax is an original idea. Archotropism is an original idea. Like what must be done and privatization, all this like privatization stuff. That's all Hoppe. He did this in 1997. I mean, it's a beautiful 50-minute speech he gives on this about how we need to go about implementing these ideas and getting to a private law society. And he did this in 1997. That was 25 years ago. If we'd started back then, this would be a radically different country. Then the fact we're just starting now, I think, is a tragedy. Like this, the entire history we've been through was avoidable.
Well, I what happened the last 2 years, it's gonna happen again, or at least they're gonna try it again. They're gonna try to do the same thing and way worse. So
climate change is up next.
Yeah, so I certainly hope that there's at least something in place locally for certain people. It won't be for everybody. So if you're in the blue city, you're probably done no matter what. But this is why I have these conversations with people like you, with anybody. I don't know if your ideas will work, but they're ideas, and they at least have a pathway forward. I see other ideas that I like the spirit behind, but I don't see the end goal. I don't actually see it. So it can be debated all day whether your ideas are going to work or make sense. But at the end of the day, people are going to give. Yeah,
I mean, we have the historical evidence that this works. Again, this is like the Tho Bishop, Andrew Jackson, Ron Paul. All the same exact model every single time. It works. It's not really a question of does it work or will it work. It works, and all we need to do is fund it. And again, if you go to misesgop.org/donate, you can help us. By just even $5 a month, you can help us eventually get to electing $5 a month, or at least every 2 years. A few hundred every 2 years. So that's my pitch to the Lions of Liberty. If you please help, I really appreciate it.
All right. So before I drop you off, why don't you just let everybody know all the places they can either reach out to you to discuss it more or donate directly, whatever it may be?
Well, you can find me at Popular Liberty _ on Twitter. You see my handle right there. You can find me at
if you just look up Popular Liberty and Asarchus, you should find plenty of you should find them easily.
Yeah, blocked him today, but
I
no more of that.
So, well.
But yeah, we will. So no more of that.
Someone else must pick up the mantle of arguing with Ace.
Yeah, someone else is gonna have to do that. But if you can find me at Popular Liberty on YouTube, and if you want to see like my deep writings, they are free on my Subscribestar at subscribestar.com/popular-liberty. You can see all of my writing there on archotropism and a little bit on the anti-tax, and those are much more detailed explanations of my concepts.
All right, Andrew, Popular Liberty, keep up the great work. Keep on roaring. I know you will.
Roar.
Live long and live free and live free and live free and live free.